Oklahoma is on the verge of becoming the first state in the nation to be approved to regulate coal ash, a highly toxic substance created by burning coal to generate electricity. The Environmental Protection Agency recently held a public hearing to gather comments on the state's regulatory plan, and they got an earful from opposition.
Only a few people showed up to speak at the EPA's public hearing. Most were strongly opposed to giving the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality the authority to take over primary regulation of toxic coal ash disposal, like Noble resident Pam Leader.
The disregard for public health by our government and the industry is so alarming that I feel I must stand up and speak out now about the poisoning of our land and water and our children and grandchildren.
Earl Hatley with the Waterkeeper Alliance warned that the 7 coal ash pits to be regulated under the plan are already out of compliance with the state's new regulations.
Nearly all of Oklahoma's ash pits and landfill units are next to our rivers and lakes, and nearly all these existing units are known to have contaminated groundwater.
Kelly Hunter Foster is a senior attorney with the Waterkeepers Alliance. Before that, she was an Oklahoma Assistant Attorney General in the Environmental Protection Unit that was dismantled by former Attorney General and current EPA Chief Scott Pruitt.
DEQ needs to demonstrate how the state is going to ensure that each of these existing facilities, many of which have long-standing groundwater pollution problems that are known. DEQ needs to demonstrate how, under these regulations, they're going to bring them into compliance.
One person who wants state control is Howard Ground, president of the power industry trade group known as the Environmental Federation of Oklahoma.
Because it is a state law now and it is a state regulation, so we've been operating under this rule for almost 2 years.
Several speakers argued that there had not been enough public input in the process, but Ground discounts that.
There's been multiple opportunities over the past 3 years for all kinds of input on the state rule and the state law and the implementation of this.
For its part, Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality sees its new coal ash rules as meeting the needs of industry and protecting the environment. Patrick Riley is manager of solid waste and sustainability for DEQ.
DEQ thought it would be a really good idea to involve our stakeholders in discussions on how future rules might impact them and what DEQ would do in response to federal rules.
Riley says the 7 sites that would fall under its jurisdiction currently meet all DEQ requirements.
The requirements call for a composite liner, which is a layered system of clay and synthetics to safely hold the material in place.
Oklahoma's power industry says 75% of the coal ash it generates is trucked off-site and is recycled in cement and other products. What remains is dumped in pits that have a liner and is then covered with a layer of clay and what amounts to baking soda, like the PSO plant near Ulaga. That does not include the ash from the bottom of the coal burner. That is mixed with water and dumped into a large open pond because PSO says it is far less toxic than the coal ash that is captured during the burning process. There is an 8th coal ash disposal site in Oklahoma that will not, however, fall under the DEQ's new rules and enforcement powers, a place that nearly every speaker mentioned.
Bekoshi, Oklahoma.
Bekoshi, Oklahoma.
A small community of Bekoshi.
The people in Bekoshi.
Bekoshi, Oklahoma.
DEQ's Patrick Riley says Bekoshi is exempt.
Placement of coal ash into a former coal mine is exempt from the federal regulation.
Attorney Harlan Hentges has represented residents of Bekoshi on legal issues involving the notorious making money having fun coal ash dump ground. He says, counter to DEQ's claims, Bekoshi is central to the plan to give total control to state government.
The regulators for the state of Oklahoma itself, is wholly unqualified to regulate coal ash, because if you will just go to Bekoshi any day, you will see violations of the law that are not being addressed by anyone.
For decades, Bekoshi was covered in a layer of airborne toxic coal ash. The environment in Bekoshi is improved now, because of changes that came about because years ago, DEQ did step in at the site.
The DEQ found 7 years worth of Clean Air Act violations by the pit in Bekoshi. They exercise their jurisdiction. They say they don't have jurisdiction. They say there's nothing that they can do, but they did it at one time.
And after the state allowed toxic produced water from oil and natural gas drilling to also be dumped at the location, the DEQ again stepped in.
The people had the opportunity in a public meeting to hold people accountable. Within 24 hours, the state of Oklahoma had called the EPA, and the EPA was on site because of violations of the Clean Water Act.
Hentges argues that several state agencies actually have jurisdiction over Bekoshi, but now lack the political will to enforce the rules.
The Department of Environmental Quality, the Department of Mines, the Corporation Commission, all of whom have some responsibility for regulating the pit in Bekoshi. No one in Oklahoma is taking responsibility.
Water is still known to be seeping out of the Bekoshi dump site, and on windy days there is still coal ash that gets airborne along with all of its toxic chemicals. And no one knows when the former abandoned coal mine will be deemed full, as the pile of ash gets higher and higher with each passing day. The EPA will make a final decision on whether to give Oklahoma authority to oversee coal ash pits in a few months.